Brad Envoy, Executive Director, Disability Justice Network of Ontario. Brad, you may begin.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So folks, I'm going to keep this in a kind of broad overview that connects the local situation to some more of the provincial pieces. But, put bluntly, every use of the Notwithstanding clause to override the charter rights and freedoms of the most marginalized people in our society is a direct and immediate threat against the well-being and safety of all of us. Even with the newly proposed pieces of legislation that the Doug Ford government has put forward, there is still an active threat to use this clause in the Constitution. It remains live on the table. We know that the vast majority of unhoused folks in this province are themselves disabled and are part of our community that has been consistently failed by all levels of government. Now, as the Canadian Human Rights Commission and the Office of the Federal Housing Advocate have stated, people with disabilities are more likely to experience homelessness because of violence or abuse, and that these numbers were even higher for women with disabilities. That's 63% of women with disabilities who experienced homelessness in their lifetime because of violence. 53% of disabled people experience homelessness in their lifetime because of violence, compared to 36% for those without. People with disabilities are more likely to miss a rent or mortgage payment because of financial issues. And ultimately, more of us are forced to move for economic reasons, including financial hardship related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The only period during the pandemic when there were additional supports available in the community where some of this was head off a little bit. Ultimately, financial hardship is a main reason that disabled folks are forced into homelessness. Moreover, we know that the number of unhoused ODSP and OW recipients has doubled since the pandemic began across the province, and that many more of our unhoused neighbors are kept from these services due to barriers arising from being unhoused. Ultimately, opposing the use of this constitutional sledgehammer would allow you to increase your own ability as a municipality to affect change and refuse to give all power over to Doug Ford. If the Notwithstanding clause's use becomes normalized, this precedent would threaten the abilities of regions like yours to govern themselves effectively and turn your council into a rubber stamp for provincial mandates. New legislation that we've seen out there also does not really empower cities. Instead, you're tied to vague provincial mandates and directives, and so are nonprofits and social services too. Ultimately, there is a whole host of pieces to this that set huge parts of the supports for members of our community, for our neighbors across the province, to the political whims of this government. So the question before you then is simple. What do you value more? The rights of all Ontarians and Niagarans, or the comfort of business owners, homeowners, and NIMBYs? So then we hope that this motion turns back reactionary ideals that are counter to everything that we stand for. DJNO was founded in 2018 by a group of racialized disabled folks from around the province. And the hope then was to build an Ontario where disabled people are free to be. But there can be no freedom for any disabled person across this province where there is a vile body of legislation backed by the threat of the Notwithstanding clause that threatens all of our communities. Instead, What you can do is take this moment and look towards increasing social assistance rates and advocating that with the provincial government, advocating for accessible housing standards in the AODA or the building code, because those don't exist. Ensuring that there's actual binding, real rent control that doesn't be undermined by like tenants leaving and having rents occur and increase between tenancies. And ultimately pushing both the federal and provincial governments for a real plan on actual, affordable, accessible housing.
Unfortunately, the time has expired, but thank you very much for your delegation today.
Thank you very much.